You know what's probably the most important thing and most impactful thing that you do as a leader, regardless of whether you're a studio leader or a team lead? It's not shipping the product, it's not hiring, it's not strategy even likely. What I think makes the most difference, the most impact throughout time is the feedback you deliver. Because feedback is your main tool to grow the team around you. And when you fail to do that effectively, when you don't provide people with the right feedback, what you end up seeing is a team that's just limiting you, because there's just so much you can do, just a cap on your ability to function as a force multiplier when the team around you is just not good enough. And feedback is how you get there. Without the right feedback, what you'll see is people operating well only if you're lucky enough to have hired someone who is in the exact position you need them to be. They already have all the tools, they already have the right mindset, and that dramatically limits your freedom when it comes to hiring people. And also, even if you had that right person and you have another right person, making those two people operate together, that usually requires some feedback, some coaching on your end as well. And don't get me started, but when things eventually change, we're not in a status quo sort of situation. In most startups, we have to keep reinventing ourselves. And feedback is, again, the number one tool for that. Well, you're lucky, because in this video, we're going to talk about the Feedback Lab. A few tips for you to start working on your feedback muscle and start getting really better at providing feedback that drives people forward. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive, coach, and consultant, and I help people just like you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. And this relates directly to the gist of today's video, because if you don't want to lead a mediocre team, you gotta give them the right feedback so you ensure that they keep growing. Part number one in doing this is actually, I think, much easier. Start giving positive feedback. Most people, assuming you're not a sociopath, find it a lot easier to provide positive feedback than it is to provide negative feedback, because we like telling people good things and not telling them that they suck. Given that, I'm still amazed how many people just don't provide enough positive feedback. We have this feeling sometimes that positive feedback is just taken for granted. People already know that. Why do I need to say that? However, there are two reasons to do that. One, oftentimes it's not really taken for granted. What you think everyone can realize, that you really appreciate someone's work, someone's growth, is not all that clear to others. So there's value in stating that. But the second part, and that's related directly to the Feedback Lab, is that when you start giving feedback, any feedback, regularly, people start expecting it. And when you have created this platform, when you have created this habit where people know that, yeah, my boss is going to come and give me feedback every so often, even if most of the time it's positive feedback, then when you eventually do give them feedback, it's easier for you because you've created this habit, and it's easier for them because this is not out of the blue. Oh my God, the first time I get any sort of feedback, it's something negative, meaning, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. If this sounds exaggerated, maybe you never were in that position, but I know so many people who were, who reacted internally the exact same as I just described. Even if the feedback itself, even though it wasn't positive, wasn't all that bad, wasn't that serious. But for them, things were always just radio silence. I'm just working for months or even years. All of a sudden, boom, I'm getting some negative feedback. The sky is falling. We don't want to do that. So, step one, start providing positive feedback. It's actually quite easy. When you see people doing good stuff, tell them that you see that. And try to have at least a bit of an explanation. So it's not just, hey, good job and a pat on the back, but something that explains what you saw, what you appreciate. Maybe, John, I know that it's not easy for you to stand on these principles, stand by them and give product pushback. You've had an issue with that in the past, and I saw that this time you really did something different. I appreciate that. Good job. That sort of stuff. Give them some context, help them understand what's important, why you're valuing their performance. Because when you do that, again, you're creating this habit of receiving feedback. You're making it a lot deeper, a lot more profound just by adding that because phrase. And you are forcing yourself to start thinking in this sort of what problem did we see or what issue and how people tackled it. This will come in useful as we'll continue talking about things in the feedback lab later in this video. Now, when should you do this? Some of the time you can do it publicly. Just tell a team or tell in front of the team that you're proud of someone doing something. But I hope that you have regular one-on-ones in which you can start giving this. Most one-on-ones, you should have at least something, some bit of positive feedback to provide someone, especially if you're their direct manager. Be it just the regular working, the latest hire, how they helped someone on board, how they handled this outage, have something. This, I know, sounds like work, because what? I need to start thinking before my one-on-ones? But yes, my friend, that's what leadership really is. And those one-on-ones, that's like the stepping stone to start creating the real change in our people, having the coaching framework for them. So do that. By the way, if you don't know how this relates to any sort of coaching framework, I've got a free short ebook called the Impact Coaching Framework, which is about installing a very simple coaching framework to help your people grow in a way that's very impact driven and a lot easier to digest for anyone from a technical background. It's a great starting step for you if you don't really have that as something within your personal operating system. So if you want to check that out, the link will be in the video description. Part 2 of the feedback lab is stop overwhelming. When I give people the feedback about needing to give feedback more, when I work with people who are, me as a coach, as a consultant working with CTOs, VPs of engineering, and I tell them that they're not giving enough feedback, some of them just, pull the lever all the way up and start hammering people with feedback, because all of a sudden, like, yeah, I can see. And they sit in a one-on-one with someone who hasn't received any real feedback from them in months, and they're like, okay, so John, look, you are late to meetings. I don't like how you commented on that pull request. I don't think you should be working on projects like these. I think that you're not communicating enough to product, these sorts of situations, and you just start running down a list of issues. And worst of all, even if for you these are all tiny things, someone seeing you coming with a grocery list and starting to hammer them with feedback makes them go again into skies falling scenario. But even if that's not the case, there's just so much that a human can handle. The point of the feedback is that we want to see them actually acting on it, improving something, changing something in their behavior, so that feedback has some reason to being given. If it's anything but positive, if it's positive, we're reinforcing things that they're already doing to help them see that this is valuable. But if we're talking about things that are constructive, that are about negative issues, just throwing a bunch of things at them usually means that they don't even know what to do, which ones to tackle. If for you, these have different priorities, different weights, when you give them all together, also you might confuse people. They might latch on to the one that's easiest for them to handle, or the one they disagree with the most, and forget about anything else. So don't do that. You have to do some bit of massaging to the feedback that you're providing. Decide, prioritize what you want to start with, how you're going to do that. So your feedback is going to be the most effective, the one that's going to give you the most ROI right now. It might be the tiniest issue because you want to start working on this concept of giving someone feedback, especially if it's someone that has issues with receiving feedback. It might be the biggest, meatiest problem because you trust that person to be able to handle it, and you're prioritizing for the thing that's most harmful for the team right now. Whatever it is, you have to take a second and think about what you want to give them, how you're going to shape that, how you want to deliver it, and how you prioritize everything. So you can write things down. Maybe you'll get to them later. Maybe by the time you get to them, they'll no longer be even relevant. That's fine. But don't just throw everything at a person, because just probably not going to help you with anything, not going to have any real positive impact. And also, when we're talking about overwhelm, sometimes at the first moment that you give someone that feedback, they still need to digest what you just told them. So they might need some time to think about the feedback you gave them, to learn what it really means for them, to actually think about it and realize whether they agree or not, as opposed to having that first instinct of saying no, or just pushing off whatever you give them. If you want them to really handle it, sometimes, depending on how they react, depending on the type of feedback you're providing, if you don't want to overwhelm them, you need to give them the first bit of feedback and tell them you want them to think about it, and you're gonna keep talking about it maybe tomorrow, maybe in the next one-on-one, but give them the ability to digest it a bit. And doing this, we just might avoid overwhelming people with feedback, which means that they're actually going to absorb it. Just like, I don't know, taking too many vitamins. That vitamins are good, but if you're taking way over the daily recommended dosage, it usually doesn't go anywhere, just, goes out when you go to the bathroom. Or even worse, it might actually have negative effects. The same is with feedback. You really need to decide what's your ideal serving size. Part 3 in the feedback lab is about making feedback actionable and having feedback remain in their own control. What does that mean? When you give them feedback without any real anything they can do about it, it's just useless. It's you venting. I want you to provide feedback that has anything actionable behind it. Then I understand what I can change. To do that, try to describe the problem, the issue that you're seeing in the team, the behavior you're seeing, and the issue that it is creating, so it is relatively clear what problem we have. And then, while sometimes you're going to have to be a bit prescriptive and say what you expect, especially if we're talking about ethics or about how things are done in the company values, most of the time that's not the case. And in those scenarios, what I want you to do is try to give the other person some sort of control here. So describe the issue, describe what sort of end result you'd like to see, what improvements you'd like to see, but give them the ability to come up with the path to get there. Maybe they need to think about that a bit. Maybe they can start working on it with you right now, but say, I'm seeing that it is often hard for you in work from home days to communicate well with the team in a way that then makes them waste a lot of time not knowing what they ought to do. How do you think we can improve on that? And, there are a variety of solutions. Maybe we need to have stand-ups in the morning. Maybe you need to have people have a backlog of things they can do. Maybe you can just check Slack every X hours, or tell people that you'll sync with them during office hours, an hour in the morning and the afternoon, whatever. But I want the other person usually to try to come up with a solution that would work for them and that they will feel ownership for, not just being told what to do, but whatever they actually do, whatever they actually change are things that they came up with. So you can help them as their leader. Maybe they'll need some ideas, but try whenever possible to give them control over how they improve, how they change, how they implement the feedback. So everything is genuinely a communal process. Again, it's not just you dumping things on them to do. And the final part, speaking about our feedback lab, is that feedback is a skill. So I want you to also help your people provide feedback. You can start with helping them provide you with feedback and how they provide feedback for people around them. Because when people start giving feedback, they actually, most of the times, are also better with receiving feedback. So this becomes a sort of a positive loop. This applies to you, and this applies to essentially everyone that we can think about, everywhere in the organization. Teach them what feedback means, teach them what we just talked about how to provide effective feedback, and see the difference in how they operate, see how they start improving. So imagine a team where feedback is just normal, it's not a bomb. People know how to help others, they know during retrospectives to talk about the important issues, and everything feels a lot more natural, a lot more collaborative. When you do that, feedback just tends to become better throughout the company. When you actually have implemented all of these, you have created a real lab where people work together, experiment, grow together. And it's not just a yearly performance review where you dump a lot of things on people and they only care about what this means to their salary, but you've created a team that actually continuously improves and learns. I don't know about you, sounds like a very nice environment to me. If this hit home, if you got any value out of it, please like, subscribe, and comment what you're going to be doing differently. I'd really appreciate that. I'll see you next week. Ciao.